I play this jazz teacher who's sort of stuck, happily stuck, but still stuck in a job where he's teaching jazz, which is a sort of a throwback of a trade. And when it comes to musical trade, he's teaching jazz to his little, his little kids in school. And he still has hopes and dreams of finally becoming that great jazz musician. And there's this big gig that's coming up, and he wants to go play for it. And he finally goes and auditions, and he gets lost. And for musicians or anybody out there, when you get lost in your craft, he's just in his thing, auditioning, no nerves. He just went, and they said, wow, you're great. You will have the gig. Finally, your life will be right. He runs out the door like everything is great. And as soon as he runs out the door, he falls into a manhole, and his whole life and afterlife changes. 22 is I would say, lack of a better word, not cynical, but it's like, doesn't really see the reason to enjoy this earth thing. And so she's a person that needs to be convinced. She's been, for lack of a better word, stuck in this delightful limbo for a while, and just, hasn't met the right person to tell her the right things to make her understand how life on earth could be. And so she's a tough cookie, played by Tina Fey wonderfully. You got the talented Tina Fey, who's just, come on. That her mind and the way she works is amazing. And plus she's a writer as well. She started out as a writer and being on Saturday Night Live. So just to be able to sort of go back and forth, even when we weren't in the same room with each other. We was only in the same room a couple of times, but just being in her presence, man, made everything, elevated. Powers and Doctor, man, the powerful doctors. What was great about them? The way they compliment each other. It was like, as we were going through the script, they would try this and try that. It was never like, man, if you don't do that, then, we're going to break it down. It was really like complimentary, and it seemed like they had a great hold on everything. And, and Doc, this is his thing. So, and then it was the good challenging part of it is to make it animated, because you're gonna talk, and then I guess they would call it the animated sweet spot, when you say it the right way that sounds like, oh yeah, that's animation. It's the incredible Pixar, you know what I mean? The way they think 4, 5, 6 dimensional. You think about it, the movies that have come before, when they deal with these types of subject matters, are really open up different sides of your head.
The story of Soul is about a man named Joe Gardner, who is a middle school band teacher, but aspiring jazz pianist by night, who finally gets his big break, thinking that that's going to change his life forever, and then has an accident that causes his soul to leave his body and almost go to the great beyond. And so he is trying to get back into his body and back to his life. I play a character named 22, who is a soul that's never been born, because even though the people in the great before have been trying to convince her, she's had a lot of mentors trying to convince her that life is great and she should go live on Earth, she is very suspect of it. She thinks it sounds scary, painful, difficult, depressing, smelly. She just doesn't want any part of it. And she is Joe's chance. If he can kind of convince her to go back, then maybe he'll get a chance to go back also. Jamie Foxx plays Joe Gardner, and he's incredible in the movie because, one, he's a really great actor, but also because he is a musician himself. All the parts of Joe's character that are tied to his love of music just feel really authentic and connected coming from Jamie, and he's just super expressive with his voice. What the movie is telling us, and what Joe learns, is that there's more to living life than achievement. Which is a really interesting thing to try to take in. There's just being present and being in the world and making connections and having feelings. There's more to life than checking boxes of things you've wanted to achieve. 22 learns from Joe that It is the small things in life that make life worth living, that you don't have to have an epic life to be a person of value and a person who has lived a full life. And I think that Joe learns from 22 to kind of pause and look around and see what he does have in his life and think less about what he wishes he had.
I play Dorothea Williams, and I am a female lead of a jazz quartet. And I am about that seriously. I am a consummate professional. I've traveled the world. I've been to many places, but it's always about bringing music and joy, I think, to audiences around the world. And whenever she's looking to bring someone new into the band, she has high standards that they must meet. She's about not only the music, the artistry, but she's also about the presentation to the audience. So you better have a suit, you better be on time, and you better take the audience there. And by there, that means transport them. Oh, Joe is, oh gosh, he is so enamored of Dorothea. He recognizes what a great musician she is. He recognizes the opportunity that's before him. He knows he better not mess up, that this may be a one-time thing, that this was a gift that literally landed in his lap, that sort of was orchestrated from years previous, because Joe, was actually the mentor, the middle school teacher of this drummer, one of his students who's a drummer, who, because of his artistry, and wound up in Dorothea's band. And this particular day, someone falls out, and it's time for the understudy to go on. So Joe has to come in and make the drummer, his students, has vouchsafed for him. So he has to come in and prove that, he can do what his student Curly said he could. Curly talked Joe up, evidently, to Dorothea in a big way. So for Curly to remain in Dorothea's good graces, Joe has got to hit the bullseye. He's got to hit the mark. He can't miss a note. Well, Jamie Foxx plays Joe Gardner, and Jamie is just so quick-witted, and he's so fast on his feet. So he's brought just a lot of character, a lot of warmth to Joe. And in the course of the stories, this, different characters take over different bodies, and but you just enjoy following Jamie in all his machinations in whatever way he shows up.
I play Paul, who we meet in a local barbershop, and Paul is sort of your classic hater. Really feels better if you are feeling worse, right? So he makes it kind of his personal mission to bring down Joe, particularly on this one day. But due to part of this madcap sort of soul caper mishap, Paul really gets put in his place in one of the more like disturbing and funny scenes I've ever witnessed in a cartoon. Joe is genuinely a nice guy, I think, but he's feels stuck. Joe's been working as a teacher for so long, which is a really hard job, and it's pretty thankless a lot of the time. And I think when he was younger, he had dreams of being like a successful jazz musician. And so it's just a different life that he's living than he saw for himself. And I think, like a lot of us, he's like getting older and not sure where the time went, and kind of lamenting that. So there's a building frustration within Joe. Everybody knows Jamie is like one of the most talented humans in the world, and he's and we know him as being hilarious, and he is. He's like genuinely one of the funniest people, and just like he can sing like crazy. He's an incredible songwriter and an incredible actor. This was something I'd never seen him do before. The Joe feels so real, and so grounded and so lived in, and the like vocal choices he's making are so subtle and affecting, and just like so honest. And it really was, for me, even as someone who's a huge fan of Jamie's work, like it was, it made me even a bigger fan. He's really, it's really stunning what he's done with this role. Oh man, I think it's just a really fun movie, and it's kind of like sensory overload in a lot of ways. It's so gorgeous to look at. The music is insane. It's like nothing else I've heard before. So that's in there too. Obviously, like two of the funniest people in the world are voicing the two main characters. So, you know, and getting to watch Tina Fey and Jamie Foxx play off each other is like a gift. And it's super, super funny. And there's so many great other characters in the film. Phylicia Rashad is in here, like, my God, you know, she's amazing. Yeah, it's just, it's really, really fun. And like, yeah, you're probably gonna cry at some point, but because Pixar movies always do that to me. But most of the ride is super fun. And there's lots of great, just like little, you're gonna wanna watch it a lot of times, I think. So there's so many little Easter eggs and things that you'll miss the first time. One-liners that go by really fast. Like it's just great. It's really great storytelling, and it's a lot of fun.
So my character is Curly, and I was a former student of Joe Gardner, my elementary school teacher. And he is a person that really gave me a passion to appreciate music, to appreciate the smallest things in life. And that seed that he planted in my head in grade school has sort of blossomed into my career now. And I guess my role is to sort of pay it forward and offer him a chance to also discover his passion. So in this film, Curly, my character, sort of brokers an audition for Joe Gardner, played by Jamie Foxx, to be in a jazz quartet with Dorothea Williams, the great Dorothea Williams, jazz saxophonist played by Angela Bassett. What I enjoyed about what Jamie Foxx brought to the role of Joe Gardner was that there's a space that musicians often get in that mere mortals don't tend to understand, and that's when you get into a zone. People tend to tag it as like musician's face. You know, whenever your eyes are closed and you're making these weird faces, that's kind of our version of a sort of a spiritual experience, you know. That's where you get into the zone. And I love the fact that Jamie's character often gets to go to that place and explain to people why us musicians go to that place where, you know, we make these weird faces and our eyes are closed. We're going to a place, another dimension unknown, only known to other creatives, and that's the zone.
Joe is trying to accommodate his mother's wishes for him. His mother, Libba, that's the character that I play, was married to a musician, and she knows how difficult it can be. And she doesn't want that for her son. She wants him to have steady work and not to be gigging. She talks about that. And she wants him to have a stable, what she thinks is a very stable life. But I don't think there's anything stable about not pursuing yourself and finding your purpose. That's where stability really lies, you know. But anyway, she has her ideas about it. So she gets him to take this job he's been offered to teach. She thinks that's a real job, and she's really happy about that. Jamie Foxx is playing Joe Gardner. Well, Jamie Foxx is doing in this film what he does all the time, perfection. That's what he does. It's always real, and it's always a little raw, and he can go so many different ways, you know. He can soften things up, and he can get a little edgy with things. He's a real artist. What to say? He's a perfectionist. Yes, Pete Docter and KEMP Powers are the directors of this film. Working with them was really amazing. It was very organic and very collaborative. They just have an inkling of an idea or a quality that they wanted to hear in the voice. And I was free to find it. And it was really, I always wanted to do an animated feature. And this is my first animated feature. I really enjoy it.
I love the process of translating everything I know into animation, because animation takes your essence. You know, when they animate my hands and my body motions and my music for Joe, you can see me in him through this computer animated person, this character. This is my essence. This, like, my soul is in him. And these scenes are really, there's interaction between Joe, the main character, and the rest of the musicians on stage with him. So we really had to figure out how to make it have an organic sensibility, which was great, because in the studio, typically when you're scoring, it's very much a set kind of thing, like almost more of a classical music or a symphonic music perspective. But this was very much a jazz-spirited score, which required us to be very malleable and to create space for it to be edited in ways that are not traditional. Jazz is misunderstood until you feel it. It's not a form of music that is meant to be presented to you or presented to you intellectually. And I think that's part of why it's misunderstood. It's meant to be felt. And I think a lot of it has been presented as this intellectual art form that's meant to be, thought about and pontificated upon as if it was some sort of museum piece when it's living and breathing. And it's not something that I think most people get the opportunity to feel on a regular basis. So I think the movie gives them an opportunity to tap into that feeling in a way that is on a mass level, and it also is a way for them to share it with other people.
If we just talk about the first three cues, The Great Beyond, Fall, and landing in The Great Before, our music and the way that we had envisaged the picture and the drawings generally surfs the line between obvious music and sound design. So when we were looking, for instance, at The Great Before, and we had some early visualizations of that, when you see, you know, The Great Beyond, rather, when you see The Great Beyond, obviously we're reacting to that with music that also works in the realm of sound design. Pete is obviously an incredible force, and as is the whole of Pixar. As a director, he has a very clear and specific point of view, I think, on everything, music included. But it was a true collaboration in terms of where we're able to take the film. And I think that certainly my mind was expanded, and I hope at the end of the day his was as well.
When we were tasked with scoring this film, the way we chose to attack it was we knew we were coming in working in collaboration with Jon Batiste, and that we knew the overall structure of the film generally, and that we were assigned the otherworldly planes primarily. Jon was New York City, real-world environments. And there was a lot of discussion at that time with Pete and the animators about what these otherworldly planes were going to look like, how they were going to feel, what it would sound like. So that informed us right off the bat. We're not going to use an orchestra, so we're going to have to think about what kind of instruments and what kind of sound and what role music's going to play and what those planes are going to feel like. I'm proud of the way that Jon Batiste's music and our music feel fluid. They don't sound the same, but it doesn't sound like two films spliced together. It was a joy working with him, and he was a very gracious collaborator. And I'm proud of the fact we were able to emotionally wrap the film up in a few ways that really felt, in an understated way, felt very poignant and helped move that audience to tears.
Joe Gardner is played by Jamie Foxx, who guy can do everything. You know, he's a great dramatic actor. He's got comedy chops. He loves music. He understands music. He's a great musician himself. And he has this unrelenting optimism and energy that I think all of which were essential for really bringing Joe to the screen. So initially, I think that character's name was 107,337,217,322. We called her 22 for short. But then in the end, we decided it's actually funnier if she is just 22. That's how long she's been up there. And she still wants nothing to do with Earth because she can look down. You know, we thought of her a little bit. 22 is kind of like a teenager who thinks they know everything. In 22's case, she can make a pretty compelling argument that she does because she's been looking down on Earth and taking notes for a long, long, long time. And to her, it looks like a lot of suffering and disappointment. And why get mixed up in that? So she ends up just being kind of a thorn in the side of the counselors who are up there, who are wanting her to go be born like everybody else. The character of 22 is played by Tina Fey, who, I read her biography, and she said she spent a lot of her youth standing on the sidelines with the cool kids making fun of people. And I think, in a way, that really personifies 22. She doesn't want to get involved with all this messiness and drama. She wants to be on the side just judging. And, of course, Tina is incredibly funny. She's incredibly smart. I think half the time she's outpacing all of the rest of us because she's just always 12 steps ahead. really, such a pleasure to work with her. The first writer I worked with was Mike Jones, and Mike and I crafted the world and the basic bones of the story. But as we ran into the specificity of Joe and wanting to know more about this character, we realized, we need somebody who has more to bring from this background. And KEMP, not only a great writer, but he ended up stepping in so many different ways in regard to set design, what kind of posters would be at Joe's house or Mom's house, and Queens, the authenticity of the neighborhood. Of course, Joe and his passions and where he, what kind of music he listens to and all of this. We ended up making KEMP co-director because he just was bringing so much to almost every department. And I think it really ups the whole film.
So Joe Gardner is a middle school jazz band teacher. He's a great teacher, and I think he enjoys his job, but I think his real true passion is playing jazz music, and I think he has these ambitions to play on big stages with people who are passionate about doing what he's passionate about. And I think when he goes to the middle school every day and kids are throwing things at him and rolling their eyes, I think it's in contrast with what he really wants to be doing. Jamie Foxx plays Joe Gardner. I think you couldn't find more perfect casting. Jamie Foxx is a comedian, a great dramatic actor, and he's also a musician in his own right. He's a pianist, and so it just felt like the perfect person to play Joe. And it was really, he just brought so much life to the character and really evolved him as we started to work with Jamie. Tina Fey plays 22, and again, we were looking for someone who could really deliver a line really sarcastically and sassy and kind of know-it-all-y, but make you laugh. And I don't think that there's a funnier comedian than Tina Fey, in my opinion. So we were just so excited to be able to work with her. And she also did some writing gag sessions with us, so that was incredible to be able to bring her on in that way as well. At Pixar, we really want to make sure our films are for everybody. We make them for the whole family. So we want, grandma down to 2-year-old Joe to have a really good time. And so there are adult themes in there, but there's so much goofiness and fun. And I'm really excited about visually what we've accomplished in this film. And I think people will really, really think it's beautiful.
Well, our protagonist, Joe Gardner, is a middle school band teacher. He's a middle-aged black man living in Queens, New York, where he's from. But Joe has always dreamed of being something else. In his heart, he's a musician at heart. And since he was very young, Joe always wanted to be a professional jazz musician. You could say that jazz music is the dream that Joe's been pursuing on nights and weekends his entire adult life. So when we find Joe in the beginning of the film, he's been a teacher for several years, but he's basically on the day where he's about to get his first really, really big break. The Great Before is a place where new souls, before they are born, are given their personality and trained by mentors who are souls who've lived amazing lives. Now, Joe very quickly figures out what's going on in the place and decides he's going to get back to his body. He's going to trick his way back into his body. So what he does is he pretends to be a counselor in hopes of getting paired with one of these unborn souls and then stealing their ticket to Earth and using it instead to get back to his body. Unfortunately, the soul that Joe gets paired up with is soul number 22, who is notoriously the most difficult soul to ever exist. She's been there quite literally thousands of years and refuses to go to Earth. She cannot get a ticket. She cannot get her Earth badge to change because she thinks that there's nothing good about going to Earth. So we have this situation where we have a soul who doesn't want to die being stuck with a soul who doesn't want to live. Joe Gardner is voiced by Jamie Foxx, just such an incredible actor, comedian, musician. It's almost as if there was a computer program where you wanted to feed all these traits into the program and ask for, like, okay, feed all the traits for the perfect person to play Joe Gardner, it would spit out Jamie Foxx. He has the dramatic chops to play Joe in these emotional moments. He's a natural born comedian for the humorous parts. And of course, not only does he understand music, he's a musician himself who's also a pianist. For the role of 22, she was played by Tina Fey, just an incredible comedian, writer, and actor. 22, we wanted someone who was a sardonic, sarcastic wit, and that kind of like describes the comedy of Tina Fey in a nutshell. When looking for someone to play a know-it-all, basically a know-it-all teenager who quite literally knows it all, going back to Tina's work on SNL, on the Weekend Update desk, to 30 Rock, so many of her characters like really embrace this almost like mean sarcasm in their comedy that we thought would be a great balance match up to Jamie's character of Joe.